Why is sloth a sin?
All right, so a few things come to my mind actually when I was looking at this question, why is sloth a sin? So the first is that it actually just goes directly against God's creative design for us.
So we're supposed to be super busy all the time.
Didn't say that, but God did design us to be able to work. Like that's part of our original design.
Okay.
And so in Genesis chapter 1,
So is all this in the context of working?
Yes.
Like what is
working?
Work
like
then?
to work and to care for those that, I mean, like, so for example, if I'm a parent,
Mm-hmm.
I can't be slothful in raising my kids.
Okay.
In other words, so if you want to label that in the realm of work, you can.
Okay.
But in other words, we have responsibilities that need to be fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
And when we choose not to do those responsibilities, that's being slothful.
Okay.
So in Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, it said, God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. Rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and every creature that crawls on the earth. So the idea of ruling the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky. So from point 1, God has given us the capacity to be able to work, to oversee. And so, for example, Adam and Eve were to be caretakers of the garden they were given.
Mm-hmm.
They were placed in. And so
we had to work even when everything was perfect.
Correct.
Oh.
Everything just became...
So are we going to have to do work in heaven?
Everything
can't just sit around and eat grapes?
Is that what you're wanting to do? Is just sit around and eat grapes? It's not really like that.
Oh.
Now, you're in a perfect world and in a perfect garden, and so Adam and Eve's caring of it is not toilsome. That was part of the curse for Adam in Genesis 3, was that his work now was going to become very laborsome.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Where before it wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah. And so there's another aspect of this in Ephesians 2, verse 10. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared ahead of time for us to do. And so being slothful is a sin in one way, in the sense of when we're not actually working and doing the things that God had created us to do, designed us to do, purposed for us to do, then we're missing the mark on that.
Okay.
And that's sin. So we're missing the mark on that. The other aspect of it, of being slothful, being as a sin, is that many times if we're slothful, it becomes a sin because we then begin to depend on others to provide for our basic needs.
Okay.
And thus, it really becomes unloving toward others. Romans 12, for example. And I know I'm giving a lot of passages today, but it really was kind of amazing how much this kind of stirred in me, actually. But anyway, Romans 12, verse 10. Love one another deeply as brothers and sisters. Take the lead in honoring one another. Do not lack diligence and zeal. Be fervent in the spirit. Serve the Lord. And so that idea of do not lack diligence is actually the idea of do not be lazy. Do not be slothful in zeal, but be fervent for the Lord. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in affliction. Be persistent in prayer. Share with the saints in their needs. Pursue hospitality. And so this all comes out of loving one another deeply as brothers and sisters. So when we're being slothful, when we are making the choice, the decision to not work, then we need others, or we're depending on others to provide for us our basic needs.
Okay.
And so, and obviously the nuanced part in this is that we're not talking about those that are not working because of, disabilities of any kind. We're talking about those that are choosing not to work.
When they can.
Okay. When they're fully capable, able to. And they're choosing not to work to provide for themselves or their family. They're choosing not to take care of their own kids. Therefore, they're dependent on others to take care of their kids for them.
Okay.
All of those, all of those things are indicative of one who's being slothful. And
I feel like there's a whole lot of other nuances. Like a million nuances to this.
And we were talking before the show, like this was actually the hardest one for me.
Okay.
Because all the others are like clear-cut actions that you're doing. Like, in other words, the other deadly sins. Mm-hmm. They were like, all right, don't covet. Well, what does that look like? Don't lust. Well, what does that look like? They're very clear. This one is more like an omission.
Right.
And instead of an action, like, in other words, you're just not doing an action.
Well, and the thing is, like, you could always spend 5 more minutes working.
Sure.
Right?
Oh, absolutely.
And so okay.
Yeah. So we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Let's get to that. We'll get to that. Let me hit one more part of where it's sinful. All right.
Okay.
So it's sinful because we're going against God's design, his creative order of us when we're being slothful. It's sinful because we are now dependent on others instead of being able to be individuals that are not only caring for ourselves and others, or ourselves and our family, but we would have the capability to care for others as well. And then third, to be slothful in our relationship with the Lord is also a sin or missing the mark.
Okay.
And that was even in that passage there, do not lack diligence in your zeal for the Lord. And so when we're slothful in our relationship with Jesus, that itself is a sin.